Hello, it is I, Aries of the feed streaming to hmm? Hi, welcome. We're reading Scum Villain today. It's a scummy Monday, I guess. Y'all, let me tell you, it is on me. Hello, Shilin. Welcome in. Let me tell you, I've been having cramps for the past 5 days. Usually my cramps will last, okay, I'll have like minor cramps for like 1 or 2 days, and then I'll actually have the cramps like a full day. This is 5 days, awful cramps, so it's died down a little. But for some reason, it seems to be worse when I'm like lying down. Oh, my Twitch loves me. Yeah, it's not fun, but I don't know. I had a little mentee bee about it yesterday, so it's okay. I'm over it. I'm over it now. Anyway, we're okay now. I still have like pain in general, but I'm better. Okay, I can do this. And I really want to stream. I want to read this book. God, we need to get back to it. We need to get back to it. I don't think I'm gonna be reading that much today. I think I just want to finish this chapter, which is like 40 pages, which honestly, that's kind of averaging how much we read here. But yeah, that's what we're doing. We're actually in like the middle of chapter 16, Melting Ice. Actually, we're more in the beginning. But we are on page 77. 77. Oh yeah, cause I was feeling sick last time. I'm just always feeling sick. I'm just a sicko. It's just who I am. That's so hot. Okay. It's okay. My OBS doesn't want to work with my Stream Deck, so I won't be able to have my reverb thing on. Doesn't work. But yeah, you'll just know from context. When you feel the pain, just remember it's like you're taking some of the weight off of Thank you, that makes me feel so much better about it. Okay. Where were we? We ended on page 77, so we're picking back on 77. Slowed his pace so he wouldn't slip. Right. This was right after the coffin scene. And our man, our guy, Shen Qingqiu had a little talk with Mr. Meng Mo. But yes. Alright, should we just get into it? We'll remember it as we go, so let's do it. As he continued, the moss gave way to more vegetation. Wild grasses and thickets of flowers began to emerge too. The corridor gradually widened, and trees of varying heights rose from the ground. The floor was no longer wet, but also snaked with the twisted roots of old trees, causing Shen Qingqiu to trip from time to time. Flying insects swooped past, and bird calls echoed. The blue-black ceiling suddenly soared, and the white crystals embedded in it twinkled, looking like a veil of stars in the night sky. Ooh, wait, I need to do this. Weenie. Though it gave the impression that they were in a forest, in truth, they hadn't left the Holy Mausoleum. They had just entered a special tomb within it. I want this kind of tomb. I like this one. I mean, it's awful, but I like this one. Every tomb in the Holy Mausoleum had been personally designed by some demon noble of a past generation while they were still alive. The result was that it was home to all sorts of wonders, numbering in the thousands. It was just like an apartment building. When folks moved in, everyone got the same base suite, and anything else was the product of the residents renovating and decorating in accordance with their preferences. The mechanically skilled The mechanically skilled preferred their tricks and divination devices. Those familiar with demonic beasts raised monstrous tomb guardians, and those gifted in herbology or herbal, which one do y'all say? I know both of them are right, so. And those gifted in I'm never gonna, I don't know. Herbology cultivated poisonous flowers and rare grasses. The owner of this tomb was clearly the last type. Though these plants appeared ordinary and common to the eye, Shen Jingqiu definitely didn't want to touch them. He removed his outer robe and draped it over both his head and Luo Bingke's, tightening his arm around Luo Bingke's waist, and carefully walked onward. The grass rustled. A frosty beam of white light shot at them through the air, along with the sharp sound of something breaking. Shen Jingqiu snapped the fingers of his left hand, and Xu Ya shot from where it was sheathed at his waist, crossing blades to divert the sneak attack with a clang. But in the end, this reduced neither opponent's momentum, even a bit. Before Shen Jingqiu had finished dealing with this trouble, a second arc of white light arrived. This one went straight for Luo Bingke's throat. Xu Ya had blocked the first sword, and Shen Jingqiu couldn't summon it back, nor could he throw Luo Bingke aside. If he torched those plants, it was all over. In a moment of desperation, Shen Jingqiu twisted slightly, raised his arm, and caught the sword point in his bare hand. The blade tore open his palm, but was caught solidly in his grasp, and advanced not an inch further. His blood didn't drip down so much as it poured. Half of Shen Jingqiu's clothes and the jade-green grass on the ground were instantly covered in a layer of crimson. Now he finally knew exactly how much it must have hurt for Luo Bingke when he grabbed Shen Jingqiu's blade with his bare hand in Jinlan City. We love to see it. Blood-colored light dyed Shen Jingqiu's red eyes. What? No, dyed Shen Jingqiu's eyes red. His head snapped up and his pupils contracted. He never would have guessed that these two were the strays Tianlangjun had mentioned. A pair of figures walked out from behind a gnarled and sturdy old tree. Or, to be more accurate, only one of them walked. The other was pushed on a little cart, something like a wheelchair. The standing individual was a beautiful woman, her waist slender and figure curvaceous, though the person being pushed sat on a wheeled chair, and their entire body below the neck was swaddled in a thick blanket. Shen Jingqiu was quite familiar with the face that was still exposed. The flying sword continued to push forward. Its force left Shen Jingqiu with no choice but to hold the blade tight, even as it was about to cut his hand right off. But the expression on his face remained unwavering. "Miss Chu, old palace master," he said with a fake smile, "I hope you've been well." Chu Haitang's gaze filled with rage. The old palace master's head jerked, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse. "Does Peak Lord Shen think I look well?" "I hope you've been well. I hope you've been well. It was just a common greeting. It usually didn't mean anything." Shen Jingqiu forced out a laugh. When he looked closer, he discovered that this word "well" really was a great mockery when deployed in this case. Before, the old palace master had been like unto an ascended immortal. At both their first meeting at the Immortal Alliance Conference and their unhappy parting in Jinlan City, his outer appearance and bearing had been pristine. But the current old palace master's typically immaculate snow-white beard was filthy and matted, and his visage looked as ancient as if he'd taken a trip through the underworld. The wrinkles on his face were packed even thicker than the gnarled bark of the ancient tree behind him. Ooh. Sorry, it's tea time. I take my tea time very seriously. The old palace master's voice was grim. "You must be very curious as how I ended up in this state." Shen Jingqiu thought to himself, "Can I just say I'm not curious? Will you let me pass?" But when he spoke, he said, This humble one heard the old palace master went away into traveling seclusion. The old palace master chuckled. Traveling seclusion? And you really believe that? In all of Huanhua Palace, in all the cultivation world, how many people actually believe that? If you want to know the true state of affairs, you'd have to ask your darling disciple. Though Shen Qingzhou didn't know exactly what had happened, it looked like the old palace master was here to get even with Luo Bingke. Keeping his expression steady, Shen Qingzhou tucked Luo Bingke behind himself, shielding him as much as possible. Are we okay? Did the stream crash or something? I can't. It's, I think we're okay. I don't know, man. Oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Okay. YouTube just gave me a notification. I'm like, what does this mean? What does it mean? It's fine. We're fine. We're fine. Chu Haitang spat out. Shenju, I said it long ago. I wouldn't mistake you even if you burned to ash. I knew your self-detonation in Huayue City must have been some sort of trick. Dying to atone for your crimes? Ha! As if you're that sort of person. I saw through you, the first sight in that demon vixen's territory. So you didn't die after all. You recognized only my physical body and not my soul. What use is that? Shen Qingzhou had nothing to say. That was in his head, by the way. The day Shen Qingzhou was caught in Sha Hualing's Qi Yun cave, he had seen Chu Haitang, oh my god, words, only briefly while saving the cultivators of various sects, and this had, it seemed, aroused her suspicions, enough for her to keep an eye out from then on. He feared that as soon as he had returned to Sangchong Mountain sect and was taken away by Luo Bingke, Chu Haitang had crossed the borderlands and followed them all the way into the demon realm. When Luo Bingke was capturing a herd of Black Moon rhinoceros pythons to break through the Holy Mausoleum barrier, he must have been wearing himself to the point of exhaustion, his mind scattered, with no attention to spare for keeping up his guard, and therefore hadn't noticed the people sneaking in after him. To summarize, you really couldn't underestimate a woman's grudge. Woman, am I right? Hi, Mothman. Ugh, woman. Shen Qingzhou. But Shen Qingzhou had genuinely never anticipated this team-up, nor did he know when Chu Haitang had come into contact with the old palace master. Although, when Shen Qingzhou thought to question the timing, he had a sudden epiphany. Did the old palace master play a part in Miss Chu's surprise appearance? Did the old palace master play a part in Miss Chu's surprise appearance in Jinlan City? Since Zhu Jilang had denied that her arrival was his doing, someone else must have been fanning the flames as well. How else could Chu Haitang have had the chance to show her face on the front lines with her measly little sect? The old palace master let out a cold laugh, giving neither an answer nor a denial. A few tiny tufts of white fluff, like dandelion seeds, drifted past Shen Qingzhou's field of vision, swirling through the air. He said, This humble Shen does not believe he ever offended the old palace master. As events have progressed this far, there are no further secrets I must keep to myself, said the old palace master. His voice was faintly hoarse, as if a lump of phlegm blocked his throat. When Luo Bingke joined my Huanhua palace, I took care to mentor him and intended to endorse him, but he refused to take me as his master, nor would he marry my daughter. Instead, he just wouldn't let go of you. Of course, I had to thoroughly investigate Peak Lord Shen to see what sort of extraordinary person you were, but I never expected that instead I would unearth your numerous old affairs. I know your details and background in and out. Who you took as your master, what you did under him, exactly how you became a disciple of Sangchong Mountain. What a colorful tale. Even without the drama with the sower, you would surely have been sent to the water prison. But who could have expected that fate had other plans, and I needn't have gone into the trouble? So, the Huanhua Palace disciples' horrible attitude toward Chen Qingzhou and Jinlan City had been because of Luo Bingke's manipulations, but the old palace master's hadn't been because of Luo Bingke's manipulations, but the old palace master's intentional influence. Hi, Kyoji. Hello. We're reading. Shen Qingzhou couldn't resist taking another look at Luo Bingke. If only this child had been more adaptable when he... got to read. If only this child had been more adaptable with his thinking and taken another master, so many problems could have been avoided. But Shen Qingzhou could never resent him for his bullheaded persistence. He could only sigh. The old palace master has looked upon my disciple highly, yet the palace master's 2 sword strikes were clearly directed at him. Your words and action do not seem to align. Back then was back then. Now things are not as they were, said the old palace master. Big Lord Shen, please step aside. I do not care what happens to you. I just want this boy to pay for what he's done. If I step aside, the palace master will kill only him and leave me be. Chu Haitang let out a cold laugh. He'll leave you be, but I'm still here. Her fighting abilities were far inferior to his, and she should have been of no consequence. However, in these circumstances, she presented quite a bit of trouble. That brute turned his back on his benefactors and left me in this state, said the old palace master. I won't rest until I kill myself. What? No. Please do it. By all means. No, I won't rest until I kill him myself. If he really turned his back on his benefactors, Shen Qingzhou said, he wouldn't have spared your life, or that of your daughter. Grass ought to be pulled up by the roots, so he understands this better than even you or me. Shen Qingzhou had never in 1,000 years thought that one day he would argue on Luo Bingke's behalf. When he heard those words, the old palace master squawked a cackle. Chu Haitang tore the blanket from his body. For a second, Shen Qingzhou stopped breathing. Below the blanket, only a uniformly rectangular torso remained. All 4 limbs were gone. The old palace master had been carved into a human stick. Serves you right. Suck it. Eat it. The master of the sect was now nestled in a broken-down little cart, filthy and barely human, left with only a head that could turn on its neck. The downfall of the original Shen Qingzhou had been transferred to the old palace master. Now this was worth holding a grudge over. This wasn't something that could be solved with a few words of persuasion, some chicken soup for the soul, or an appeal to Buddhist compassion. The old palace master let out a cold laugh. It was all your darling disciple's doing, you see. I wish he had pulled up the grass by its roots. Shen Qingzhou fully agreed. Why hadn't he pulled up this grass by its roots? Make a moment for real. Of these 2 strays, one wanted to kill Luo Bingke and one wanted to kill Shen Qingzhou. Chu Haitang's cultivation was insufficiently powerful, so she had needed someone's assistance. The old palace master was much stronger than her, but he was down on his luck. A starved camel was still larger than a horse, and the old man had once been the leader of a sect, even though he had lost his limbs and was unable to move freely. His spiritual energy hadn't weakened. This was what they meant by the saying, men and women complete and complement each other, or the blind carrying the lame. Wait, what? Hang on. Also, fuck you. Also, fuck you, Shen Qingzhou. I'm still stuck on this. A starved camel was still larger than a horse. Okay, got it now. I needed to read that one again, because I was a little confused. Shen Qingzhou snapped the sword blade with his bare hands and tossed it into a nearby bush, his stare fixed on the two people poised to attack. In truth, he could make a bet. Even if Luo Binghe's OP abilities were useless against a character like Tianlang Jun, whose data wasn't pulled from the original work, the old palace master was a character grounded within the bounds of the original story. The protagonist's plot armor probably had yet to lose its effect against him. Shen Qingzhou could likely just step back and leave Luo Binghe to his own devices, just like how he had screwed over Deer, the Skinner demon, in the Shuanghu City plotline. He could let the old palace master hack at Luo Binghe and see who, in the end, would finish off whom. Oh, I wonder. The old palace master said leisurely. I'll ask again. I said that so bad. I'll ask again. Will you step aside or not? Shen Qingzhou lowered his arm. The blood that had slowed its steady flow from his palm began to drip once more. The blood that had slowed its steady flow from his palm began to drip once more. That's such a fun sentence. The old palace master said himself that he's my darling disciple, he said in an even tone as he lifted his head. Tell me, do you think I'd step aside? There was nothing for it. Now was not the same as then. No matter what, Shen Qingzhou couldn't convince himself to use the protagonist's plot armor to coldly stand aside and let someone else hack at Luo Binghe to bet on whether he would live or die. If, at this point, he could still use Luo Binghe and put him in danger like that with a clear conscience, he really would be like the Scum villain of the original novel. The old palace master's eyes suddenly bulged, and several shouts exploded from his mouth. He had lost his limbs, so he poured his spiritual energy into his voice, using this to attack. With every shout, a powerful spiritual flow swept over Shen Qingzhou like an onslaught of blades, the power of the voice no less than that of a spiritual blast. Grass and foliage thrashed back and forth, leaves flying from trees. Shen Qingzhou used his still bleeding right hand to block a few waves with the sheath of his sword. The tremors caused the wound to explode with agony, but he couldn't switch hands. If he didn't keep holding Luo Binghe in his left arm, he was afraid he'd drop him. Even though the old palace master had been carved into a human stick, his spiritual energy hadn't weakened in the slightest. No wonder Chu Haitang had chosen to rely on him. As Shen Qingzhou thought this, the old palace master suddenly let out a howl. A light cracking sound came from Shu Ya's sheath, and Shen Qingzhou failed to block the assault. Overcome, Shen Qingzhou toppled backward. As he fell, he turned and used his own body to cushion the fall, not letting Luo Binghe land on the ground, and for his efforts was yet again crushed to the point he saw stars. The old palace master finally stopped howling, and Chu Haitang slowly pushed him closer. He caught his breath for a while, then looked down at Shen Qingzhou, who still held Luo Binghe. You really do protect him a great deal. Chu Haitang clenched her teeth. Fake! It's all fake! This bastard! Who is he putting on a show for? Why not fight back with your spiritual... Man, never gonna get it. It's always gonna be difficult. Why not fight back with your spiritual energy? The old palace master asked. Because I've already run dry, of course, Shen Qingzhou replied. Tuft after tuft of white fluff flew past, nearly alighting upon Luo Binghe's deathly pale cheek. Nearly alighting, my bad. Shen Qingzhou blew lightly, and they veered off and away. The old palace master thought Shen Qingzhou had accepted his fate, and so turned his attention away, his gaze instead landing on Luo Binghe's quietly sleeping face. The hollering fury suddenly dropped clean away from the old palace master's expression, replaced with a kind of enraptured look. Shen Qingzhou held his tongue. Something was very off about that gaze. The old palace master looked on for a while, bewitched, then sighed. They look most alike when his eyes are closed, or when his expression is cold. The old palace master's stare was palpable as it crawled up and down Lobinka's face. If he still had hands, they definitely would have reached out to touch him by now. Shenjingcho's stomach turned and his arms moved unconsciously to pull Lobinka's head further into his embrace. Now Lobinka was resting intimately against his body, and even his head leaned upon Shenjingcho's chest. Shenjingcho said severely, "Take a good look. This is not Su Xian." This name woke the old palace master from his daze. "Why wouldn't you listen to my orders?" he spat. "Why wouldn't you just listen to me? Was I not good to you? Didn't you want Huanhua Palace? Didn't you want my seat? I knew you wanted it ever since you were young. If you just listened to me, what wouldn't I have passed down to you? But one after the next, both of you ingrates spat on everything I gave you. Spat on everything I gave you." He snarled curses and raged, pouring every poisonous word into his vocabulary onto Tianlangjun and Shenjingcho, then roared about ingrates several dozen times in a row before his expression made an abrupt 180, becoming gentle. He said in a parental tone, "Xian, come here. Shizun has something for you. Drink up." Gross. Gross. Yeah, he's kind of a creep. Just a little. The old palace master had sunk in a trance, and saliva dripped from the corner of his lips as Chu Haitang stepped back slightly, disgust evident on her face. Epiphany sparked through Shen Jingzhou, and his stomach turned even more intensely. No wonder the old palace master had always been so good to Luo Bingke, to an almost unsettling extent. No wonder that Su Xian, despite being his most beloved disciple, had held absolutely no attachment to Huanhua Palace and had readily betrayed her sect to run off with a demon youth without ever looking back. This love, quote-unquote, must not have been much different from molestation. That's... Oh my god. It's true. It's true. That's just how it is. That's how you put it. That's the accurate descriptor of it. Wish Binga got his tongue too. Yeah, he should have cut off his tongue. And the old palace master's favorable interest in Luo Binghe was definitely founded in the shade of a former beloved disciple that the sect leader had seen in him. He had extended his perverse possessiveness of Su Xian to Luo Binghe, deluding himself into thinking he could groom Luo Binghe into an obedient, darling child. But looking at him in this crazed state, Shen Jingzhou feared it wouldn't be anything so simple as making Luo Binghe his successor. Nor would obedient be relegated to the literal meaning of the word. No wonder Luo Binghe had carved him into human swine. Shen Jingzhou covered the back of Luo Binghe's head with one hand and pressed Luo Binghe's face into his own chest so that the old palace master couldn't keep fantasizing about him. This really was more than he could bear. "Have you had enough?" As soon as that visage was hidden from his sight, the old palace master's face immediately collapsed, twitching as if his muscles were seething, his gaze overflowing with hatred and resentment. He snapped open his mouth, but no sound came from his throat. His eyes bulged, and his entire body seemed to have frozen into a statue carved from stone. Doesn't even know, man. It's true. He does whatever he wants. He will do whatever he wants. Shen Jingzhou held his breath for a short time. Gurgles came from the old palace master's throat, and bloodshot veins crawled up the whites of his eyes. But he couldn't move an inch. It's finally here. You really thought I was some dumbass Mother Teresa who wouldn't know to hit back when attacked? You really thought carrying one person would weaken me to the point that I'd be incapable of slapping your cheek right back? That was all in his head. Chu Haitong was shocked. What's happening? She made to draw her sword, but Shen Jingqiu cut in. Miss Chu, I offer you a word of advice. Do not draw your sword and do not rashly use your spiritual energy, if you don't want to share his fate. Doubtful, Chu Haitong circled around the old palace master's front, then let out a shrill scream. Fleshy green protrusions had sprouted between the dense wrinkles on the old palace master's aged face. He seemed to be in such intense pain that not only could he not move, he couldn't even speak. Chu Haitong's voice trembled. Shenju, what have you done? Nothing at all, said Shen Jingqiu. Don't forget, this is someone else's tomb. Did you think the demons would have failed to install protections? The tuft of white fluff floating in the air like dandelion seeds scattered in the wind were actually a type of demonic plant called ties that bind. First try. This plant sowed its seeds in the bodies of living beings, and they were especially attracted to people who gave off energy. Recklessly deploying one's spiritual or demonic energy attracted these seeds to oneself. That was why Shen Jingqiu had stuck to physical combat as much as possible and avoided using his spiritual energy. When ties that bind seeds entered one's flesh, they didn't hurt, only faintly itched, but once they sprouted from the flesh that was their soil and burst forth through the skin, every inch of rent flesh from which they grew erupted in violent agony. Furthermore, the more you use your spiritual energy, the faster they grew. If you went as far as to use a spiritual blast, they would sprout like mad, budding in an instant. This whole time, the palace master had been attacking with his roars. His spiritual flow had been gathered. His spiritual flow had been gathered in his head and throat, and now his face teemed with plump sprouts. The inside of his mouth and throat were certainly also stuffed full of the things. The sprouts' short stalks were covered with thin fuzz and blood vessels, but the roots continued to stretch down beneath the skin, extending until they intertwined with his nerves. Oh my god! I forgot about that. Shen Qingqiu clicked his tongue. Old Palace Master, you must not keep yelling and screaming. If the ties that bind proliferate and grow into your brain, there really will be no going back. He's such a cunt. I love him. The scene was both disgusting and horrifying. Chu Haitong covered her mouth and trembled until she could finally bear it no longer. Her eyes rolled back into her head, and she fainted on the spot. One couldn't move an inch, and one was unconscious. TPK. Total party kill. Shen Jingqiu let out a sigh of relief. Holding Lo Bingke, he struggled to his feet. Muscles tensed, the old palace master slurred out. Don't celebrate too early. You're no better. Merely saying those few words made his face twist in pain. The sprouts all over his face trembling along with his movement. Shen Jingqiu gave him an in response. A deep, uncontrollable pain crawled up from his right arm to his shoulder. When Shen Jingqiu blocked those two sword strikes, he had been forced to use spiritual energy, and now he was finally sprouting as well. But that was fine. Lo Bingke was safe at last. I'm fine. This is so normal. Seeing that Shen Jingqiu was going to leave, half carrying, half dragging Lo Bingke along with him, a cry escaped the old palace master's throat. In his urgency, he crashed out of the little cart, and his limbless body squirmed excruciatingly through the thicket of flowers and grasses covering the ground, scooting forward inch by inch, a terrifying yet pitiful sight. Don't go, the old palace master muttered. Don't go. Don't you go. Shen Qingzhou fled even faster, but he never expected that the old palace master's eyes would snap open and another roar would explode from his throat. He was going to attack even at the cost of his own life. Shen Qingzhou could no longer tell if the old palace master was trying to keep them there or take Lo Binghe's life. He barely managed to block again with his already crackling He barely managed to block again with his already cracking sheath. The vibration traveled down his right arm, stirring the bloody sprouts just beginning to emerge from it. Gut-wrenching agony tore through him, but he still didn't let go of Lo Binghe. Bolstered by the extreme pain, his fighting spirit climbed, and he glared at the old palace master, murderous intent raging in his eyes. You know what to do, my guy. You pain ignoring motherfucker. It's okay, because Lo Binghe is safe. I can't do it. I can't. They're gay. After that yell, quite a number of fleshy sprouts broke once more through the old palace master's skin, some even growing from the corners of his eyes. He seemed unable to even feel pain at this point, and he cackled his fits of laughter. And he cackled in fits of laughter, rolling around on the ground like a hunk of pork to Chu Haitang's side. He yelled into her ear, "Aren't you going to kill Shen Qingzhou? He's right before your eyes, and you're asleep? Get up! Kill him! Kill them all!" At this yell, Chu Haitang gradually drifted awake to the old face, gnarled like a dried orange peel, inches from her own. One that was furthermore covered in strange growths, pocked densely with bloody holes, and was scared out of her wits on the spot. She screamed and screamed, drawing her sword and flailing it at empty air. Afraid she would rashly call on her spiritual energy and draw the ties that bind seeds to herself as well, Shen Qingzhou called out, "Calm down!" Quick! The old palace master squawked. "Weren't you always begging for my help? They can't hold on much longer. Do it now." Oh god, doing his voice is not fun. Hello? Okay. Oh my god. Anyway. Only when Chu Haitang had Shen Qingzhou in her field of vision did she come back to her senses, just slightly. Her hands shook and her eyes were blank. To tell the truth, Shen Qingzhou didn't really hold a grudge against Chu Haitang. She was a victim of the original flavor after all. But if she insisted on blocking their way here, he would have to fight her. But in defiance of all his expectations, Chu Haitang didn't indiscriminately attack like before. She just stared blankly at Shen Qingzhou, then at Lo Binghe lying in his arms. Not only did she not advance, she even retreated a few steps. "It's not possible, she said, her lips trembling. "It's fake! It's all fake! It wasn't my brother! My brother didn't do anything wrong! It couldn't have been him! You're lying!" "What's this?" "I didn't know!" She sobbed and screamed. "I didn't know it was like that! I didn't do anything at all, so why did I have to suffer for so many years?" Shen Qingzhou was shocked. Chu Haitang had been unconscious for only a brief moment. Why was she practically a different person upon waking? Or perhaps it was more like she had seen something she couldn't accept, and had been terrified into insanity. Shen Qingzhou knew something was up. He said sternly, "Don't thrash about." "What are you waiting for?" the old palace master yelled. Chu Haitang lost her mind and screamed at Shen Qingzhou, huddling with her arms over her head. "What exactly did you think of me? Did you hate me? Pity me? Want me to suffer a fate worse than death? Why didn't you kill me? Why didn't you kill me?" You know, knowing the context, this is quite something. Shen Qingzhou was completely mystified. Chu Haitang turned and ran. "Come back," he called after her. "Randomly running around the holy mausoleum means certain death." But she had already fled, and he didn't have time to chase her. Shen Jingzhou experienced a strange sense of dejection, or perhaps loss. He didn't know exactly how he felt about this. After a while, he mentally lit a candle for Chu Haitong, then continued on. As Chu Haitong had run off and Shen Jingzhou was also walking away, the old palace master lost his last thread of hope. He sprawled numbly on the ground, then suddenly dropped his head to chomp on a mouthful of grass and leaves. He chewed and laughed, cackling and guffawing, as the fleshy sprouts on his face grew denser and denser, faster and faster, until they blanketed his entire head. Not long later, he could no longer laugh. Shen Jingzhou could almost hear the noise of his skull and brain being compressed. The old palace master's breath came in rough pants before his head thudded heavily to the ground. He would never lift it again. The leader of a dying sect in such a wretched and frightful... What? The leader of a sect dying in such a I can read. The leader of a sect dying in such a wretched and frightful manner. It really was cause for pity. And that is a scene break. And we have way more of this chapter to get through. There's so much more. There's so much more. Okay. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's kind of beautiful. It's kind of beautiful. I just really, I kind of like it, you know? I wouldn't really like to die like that, but like, you know, the decomposition by plant matter is quite nice, I think. He should have had it worse. He should have had it so much worse. Ugh. We are at the bottom of page 93. And that's the end of that sentence. Okay. Before Shen Jingzhou had gone very far, an indistinct voice sounded by his ear, as if it was coming from all directions at once. There was a smiling Tianlang Jun's tone. There was a smile in Tianlang Jun's tone. Peak Lord Shen has played such a spectacular game of hide-and-seek. Why don't we guess when we'll meet again? I love him. I love him very much. I love him. I love him so much. Sushihan waiting on Naomi to beat him up. Oh yeah. Oh, it's not over for him yet. Hell yeah. Shen Jingzhou rubbed his leg and found his hand covered in foreign matter. Ew. Cold sweat poured from his forehead. The ties that bind had already followed his blood vessels down to his leg. Tianlang Jun spoke through the voice-transmitting spell again. By heading straight east, are you trying to escape the Holy Mausoleum through the tear in the barrier? The bastard even knew which way he was going. Shen Jingzhou kept his surprise to himself and looked down. Once the ties that bind on his leg fully took root, he wouldn't be able to walk even if he tried. He clenched his teeth and glanced at Lo Binghe. Steeling himself, he tore open his hem, grabbed a handful of bloody sprouts, and pulled. His brain went blank for what could have been half a minute. A whole chunk of his flesh seemed to have been torn out. Shen Jingzhou panted for breath. Only after slowly coming back to his senses did he discover that his breath sounded very much like sobs. He couldn't even wipe his face. He had no way to do so. It really hurt too fucking much. Though his blood was flowing in rivers, at least he could walk now. He had thought Lo Binghe was in a wretched state, but if anyone saw him now, they'd find his condition 120% more wretched. Tianlang Jun knew their location, so he had to be rushing here already. Hydrate. I'll do that. Thanks for hydrate. I put too much honey in that one, in this tea. But Tianlang Jun knew their location, so he had to be rushing here already. If Shen Jingzhou kept going east with Lo Binghe, they'd definitely run headfirst into those two wonderful relatives of his. After leaving that primeval forest of a tomb hall, Shen Jingzhou passed another chamber. He rapidly went in and selected a relatively clean and comfortable stone coffin, and, supporting Luo Binghe's head, carefully settled him inside. When he tested Luo Binghe's forehead with the back of his hand, it was still scalding hot, and the mark in the center of his forehead was growing even redder and brighter. Shen Jingzhou placed Jinmo beneath Luo Binghe's hand, calmed himself, and then slowly closed the coffin. He loves him so much. That's another scene break. We're on the next page now, at top of 95. Okay, we're continuing, obviously. Tianlang Jun strolled in front. Zhu Zilang followed close behind. After a turn in the corridor, they found Shen Jingzhou, Shuya in hand, standing in the corner of the mausoleum hall. He looked at them with a cool gaze, as if he had been waiting for a long time. Half of his teal robes had been dyed scarlet, and fresh blood still dripped down his right hand along the dried traces of old gore. His lips were nearly as pale as his face. Tianlang Jun was shocked. We were separated for a mere moment. How has Peak Lord Shen ended up in such a woeful state? Shen Jingzhou looked back at him. Tianlang Jun had been swallowed by a flaming pillar of magma in the Hall of Fury, yet he didn't smell of so much as a single scorched sesame seed. At most, his black robes were a bit singed at the edges. What the hell kind of logic was that? Where is Peak Lord Shen's beloved disciple? Tianlang Jun asked. He left, said Shen Jingzhou. Tianlang Jun smiled. Peak Lord Shen is still here. How could he have left? Shen Jingzhou smiled back. After this exchange of smiles, Tianlang Jun suddenly found himself unable to continue doing so. He had discovered that he couldn't take another step. He looked down. At some point, he had been covered by a layer of super hard, crystal clear ice from his feet to his waist, and the ice was still inching up his body. Zhu Zilang's situation was a bit more severe. Both his legs and one of his arms had already been frozen solid. Only now did Tianlang Jun notice that this mausoleum hall was extremely cold. He paused and said, "The Mobe clan." Mobe! Mobe! Mobe Jun mentioned a little bit, you don't know how crazy I am about him. He hasn't been here in like 2 months. Oh my god, okay, anyway. Tianlang Jun knows what apparently he doesn't know enough. Because he fell into this trap. Stupid. The mausoleum hall had been constructed by Mobe Jun's grandfather. Their bloodline was adept at controlling ice. Their powers were unrivaled among the demon race, with none their equal. So the power of this hall also revolved around ice magic. Hi, werewolf. Ice magic. I'm sorry. It's just anytime my favorite people I mentioned, my brain is like the only thing in my brain is a picture of them. Okay, that's what happens, and I short circuit. Can you tell this is a special interest of mine? Can you tell? The holy mausoleum was filled with settings and props for Shen Jingzhou's use. He didn't need to attack anyone with his own hands. There were plenty of things that could entrap his enemies. Shen Jingzhou had remembered that the original work said that whenever anything warmer than the air in this hall entered, it would be frozen on the spot, turned into an ice statue. After a couple of days, the ice statue would then shatter into shards. Before he came in, he had activated his spiritual meridians to lower his body temperature as far as it could go. That was why his face was so pale. During this brief exchange, ice had already crept up to Tianlang Jun's chest. The expression on his face didn't waver as demonic chi roiled in his hand, but it was unable to melt through the ice wrapped around his fist, so it came to little effect. Even if this ice couldn't keep him frozen forever, it would delay him for at least an hour. So I genuinely wasn't mistaken, Tianlang Jun said. Peak Lord Shen knows my race's forbidden mausoleum practically as well as the back of his hand. Without another word, Shen Jingzhou waved, and he was off in a swirl of robes. Like, I don't know, it just dips. Whatever. Tianlangjun took a look at Zhuji Lang and leisurely said, I told you that if you were truly determined to bring Peak Lord Shen to the demon realm, you would have to guarantee that he wouldn't cause trouble. You know what you have to do. The subordinate understands, Zhuji Lang quietly responded. Upon hearing this exchange, Shen Jingzhou suddenly felt as if he might have forgotten something very important. Zhuji Lang said, Immortal Master Shen, my apologies. And now in italics, don't. 1,000 times don't. I ended up in this sorry state because you wanted to thank me. Will I even be able to get out of this alive if you start apologizing? Just as these thoughts crossed his mind, Shen Jingzhou suddenly swayed even though he had been walking just fine, and he had to brace himself on the stone wall for support. It felt like something was squirming and struggling, surging from his stomach to flood all the veins in his body. This sensation was both familiar and terrifying, and Shen Jingzhou nearly busted out a motherfucker on the spot. Lord Binko was still sleeping in the coffin, so the stuff wreaking havoc in his body at this moment could only be someone else's blood. Who's speaking? Okay. Peak Lord, this can't be the first time you've drunk heavenly demon's blood. How are you still not accustomed to it? Tianlangjun asked. Shen Jingzhou forced back the urge to retch. When did you make me drink it? Peak Lord Shen, don't forget, your mortal body was in our hands for no short amount of time. Tianlangjun, Tian. I can say it. Tianlangjun replied, his words quite suggestive and teasing both. There's really too much we could have done. Bro! This guy. Yeah. Oh, I just realized that my chat box isn't even working. Let me just take this down. There's no point to have this. Be on. Sorry. Be thankful we didn't doodle a mustache on you, Big Much. Yeah, he could have drawn a penis on your forehead. No wonder they had determined where he was heading so easily. Shen Jingzhou paused, then continued walking. The more he walked, the sharper the pain in his stomach grew, but he kept going faster and didn't slow down, partly because his pain tolerance had grown, but more so because he absolutely couldn't fall to his knees now. While these two were still frozen, he had the chance to escape. By the time they defrosted, it would be no easy task to stall them again. Though he was clear about the pros and cons here, as he walked faster and faster, Zhuji Lang spurred the blood into fiercer action. Shen Jingzhou couldn't resist turning to shoot a ferocious glare at him. He said he wanted to repay a kindness, so he was doing it by letting these blood mites nest, lay eggs, and enjoy a family reunion in Shen Jingzhou's stomach? To be able to walk so far, even in this state, Peak Lord Shen must have an iron will, truly an extraordinary person, Tianlangjun remarked. Or should I say, it's that you're willing to throw even your life away for my son. Suddenly, Zhuji Lang said, My lord, this subordinate can't suppress it any more. Before he had finished speaking, Shen Jingzhou felt the pain suddenly dissolve, and his entire body went light. He immediately broke into a run. As he actually started running, Tianlangjun was quite surprised. Can't your blood suppress him? Zhuji Lang was greatly confused as well. It could before, but for some reason this time it can't. Shen Jingzhou's ears buzzed. He couldn't hear, and his sight was blurred, but knowing he still had to drag Lo Binghe to the entrance and toss him out, he supported himself against the wall and kept jogging. Tripping on something, his figure swayed. After forcing himself to hold on for so long, he was nearing his body's limits and on the verge of collapse. His knees, immediately went soft. However, he didn't fall to the ground and found himself caught solidly by someone's arm, then was half supported, half lifted to his feet. Who could it be? With his vision a blur and the world spinning around him, Shenjingzhou's gaze focused upward. In the murky darkness of the stone corridor, it was impossible to see the person's face, but a pair of eyes burning with fury and a mark shining with scarlet light shone clearly through the gloom. Tianlangjun and Jujilang were now frozen from head to toe, two ice sculptures coiled with dark chi standing in the center of the hall. After Lobinka strode into the hall, threads of ice-cold white chi crawled up his black boots, but he mercilessly stomped them to pieces. He slammed a palm into each of the ice sculptures, and cracks snaked along the surface of the solid ice. "It's no use," Shenjingzhou said, half leaning against the stone wall. "Crystallized ice isn't so easy to break after it's formed, and attacking it like that can't harm the ones inside. We might as well take advantage of this opportunity to escape the Holy Mausoleum while they're sealed." Lobinka whipped around and walked toward Shenjingzhou again. When he had first seen Lobinka, Shenjingzhou had been both surprised and happy. He had planned to go back to the coffin and fetch him, not expecting that he'd wake up himself. He was just about to ask how Lobinka was feeling when he realized that Lobinka seemed to be furious. "Didn't I tell you not to associate with them?" Lobinka snapped. He spoke in nearly a roar. Shenjingzhou was already dizzy, and now his eardrums ached at the volume of Lobinka's voice. It was like someone had thrown a basin of cold water in his face. After staring blankly for a moment, he suddenly felt an inexplicable flame of anger erupt within his heart. He said dryly, "Are you better now?" "Better? Better how?" Lobinka's tone was still unkind. If he was that full of vitality, he was probably fine. That being the case, Shenjingzhou had managed to repay Lobinka at least a little bit. He nodded. "That's good." Then he turned, picked a random direction, and walked off. Actually, he didn't know where he ought to go. If he wanted to leave the Holy Mausoleum, Shinmo and Lobinka were both indispensable. Without either, he could only blindly wander around inside. But he staked his damned life to drag Lobinka all this way, and just to be yelled at for his troubles. Staying there to sulk would be pointless, too. Before he'd gotten very far, a last breath candle on the side of the corridor blazed with light, and the dim candlelight illuminated one side of his face. Lobinka suddenly reached out and caught his arm. "Are you crying?" Shenjingzhou froze. Was he crying? Was he crying? Not possible. Here's the point where I bring up the illustration. Today's illustration. Ad starting soon. Oh my god, okay, well. Ah, it's them. Oh my god, it's them. There it is. There he I'm sorry. I just need to admire this for a bit because I love it when a strong pretty boy, strong pretty man cries. I just love it. What can I say? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And Binku is so worried about him. I'll cry, actually. God, I fucking love it so much. I love it so much. Anyway, Shenjingzhou wiped his cheek with his left hand. This perfectly uninjured hand had kept a firm hold on Lobinka the whole time, only now was it free to do other things. As soon as he touched his face, he realized that at some point, tears had indeed streamed down his cheeks. Shenjingzhou was abruptly aware that these were the tears of pain he had cried while pulling the ties that bind from his leg. How unsightly. Lobinka's anger disappeared from his voice without a trace. "So earlier, when I heard the faint sounds of Shizun crying, that was real?" he asked, tone urgent. What crying? Shen Qingzhou snapped, lashing out somewhat in embarrassment. I don't know anything about that. He tried to walk right off again, but Luo Binghe hurriedly embraced him from behind, and just so managed to grab Shen Qingzhou's right arm where the ties that bind had taken root. Shen Qingzhou managed not to shriek, but he still let out a stifled groan. Luo Binghe immediately let go and led him over by the left hand to inspect him under the candlelight. The more Luo Binghe looked, the more shocked he became. Practically no place on Shen Qingzhou's body was safe to look at. He was nothing but a heap of wounds and blood, truly a spectacle too horrible to behold. Luo Binghe remembered that before he had lost consciousness, Shen Qingzhou had clearly still been in perfect condition. His voice trembled. This was all for me? Shen Qingzhou was going to spit blood. If not for Luo Binghe, then who? He couldn't say that sort of thing. He always felt awkward making a big deal about what he'd done for someone else or showing off his scars, and he only managed to retch out 4 words. Your hand. Let go. Luo Binghe changed his expression in the blink of an eye and softened. I won't. Shizun, don't be angry. I was wrong. He said that so many times. In italics. Shen Qingzhou waved him aside, again in italics. Hurry up and go, go, go. The blind corpses are surrounding us already. Why are we still here, blocking the road? Having been waved off, Luo Binghe latched onto him again, like sticky cowhide candy, impossible to pry off. Shizun, why don't you hit me? You can beat me up to vent your anger. Italics again. Help, there's a masochist over here. Someone come lock him up. There's a masochist over here. Oh, Luo Binghe is a masochist tag on AO3. Shen Qingzhou flew down the corridor and Luo Binghe stuck to him the whole way. He was most familiar with Luo Binghe's act by now. Luo Binghe knew very well that he responded to sweetness rather than to threats. After a long while of being pestered and worn down, Shen Qingzhou said helplessly, You're always like this, crying and admitting your wrongs, but you never change. What's the point? At this point, Luo Binghe was close to sobbing. I'll change, all right? Shizun, don't abandon me. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. Luo Binghe. That's his whole thing. He said the thing. That's his whole thing. The sight of him acting like such a good-for-nothing was such that if Shen Qingzhou hadn't still been concerned about the bumps he had left on the back of Luo Binghe's skull, he'd have been filled with the urge to give him a few smacks on the head. There was nothing wrong with his teaching methods, was there? How had he raised such a crybaby? What would everyone say if they knew the devil incarnate Luo Binghe liked to hang out with to hang onto his Shizun sleeves and wail when no one else was around? Who'd fucking believe it? Not even Ning Ying Ying cried this much. You know, here's the thing: is that he is doing the crocodile tears, but he's also like it's real. So it's like I still love him, and I can't. I would be Shen Qingzhou. I'm no better than him. I'm no better. I'd fall for it every fucking time. Shen Qingzhou couldn't take it anymore. Who's abandoning you? Who's abandoning you, huh? After I lost consciousness, I still retained a shred of awareness. I was fighting with all my might to wake up, Luo Binghe said. But once I finally managed to wake, I found myself lying in a coffin, and Shizun had run off to who knows where. I snapped. I thought I'd been abandoned, and I thought Shizun would rather run off with those two than pay attention to me. Waking up to find yourself alone, abandoned, in a coffin, that certainly wouldn't feel good. Shen Qingzhou guiltily coughed. Just now, I didn't do that on purpose, Luo Binghe continued. I don't even know why I did it. I didn't want to, and I didn't want to say those things, but I can never control myself in front of Shizun. I know I'm being embarrassing and unsightly, but knowing that Shizun didn't abandon me, that he was protecting me all along, that I wasn't dreaming, I'm so happy. In his head, exactly which one of us is being embarrassing and unsightly here? Two grown men entangled in a heap, wiping at tears and snot. We're both being embarrassing and unsightly, okay? Perhaps because he was too happy, Lo Binghe was now unable to utter any of his flowery vocabulary. He just kept repeating the words happy and glad over and over in those simple terms. In those simple terms, over and over in those simple you know what else he would be to say that Anyway, Shenjingzhou's face twitched, rubbing his temples. He let out a deep sigh. Whatever, it wasn't like this was the first time. Even Meng Mo had said that this kid was just like this, acting all badass, dark, and demon lord to your face. But who knew if he was wringing his handkerchief and crying behind your back? What use was it to hold that against him? He doesn't. He knows what he's about. Oh man. Getting back to the point, Shenjingzhou himself had been ridiculous too. Getting upset over such a small misunderstanding. He was no better than this unfortunate lunatic child. How unlike a proper elder. He caught his breath for a moment. You're really all right now? Lo Binghe immediately nodded. I'm all right. He had such a high fever, and now he was perfectly fine? Shenjingzhou was quite skeptical and pressed a hand to Lo Binghe's forehead, but he found it cool and smooth. He tried to take his hand away, but Lo Binghe covered it with his own, refusing to let him move, eyes shining below their folded palms. This expression was too familiar. Wasn't this that good and upright youth, that bleeding, grass-chewing little lamb who had followed Shenjingzhou around every day on Qingjing Peak, that small, refreshing son of a Lo Binghe? Shenjingzhou's face was going to turn red under his stare, but he couldn't just tear his hand away. If he did that while Lo Binghe was all excited and overjoyed, how would that be any different from slapping him across the face? Oh my god. Shenjingzhou. I think that's enough of that for now. You're really completely fine? Shenjingzhou asked. No dizziness? Your spiritual and demonic energy are circulating well? Quite well, said Lo Binghe. Very well. Even better than before. As they spoke, they had reached a chamber on the east end of the mausoleum. Lo Binghe drew his sword and slashed, and a pitch-black spatial rift appeared in the screen wall. Footnote, a solitary, disconnected wall constructed to shield gates from evil spirits, as evil spirits in legend cannot turn corners. They can't? Oh. What? Hello? I'm okay. I'm okay. His broken arm had mysteriously healed itself. He was no longer limping. The blood on his face had been wiped clean, and the ever-disobedient Jin Mo was docile in his hands. The protagonist was still the protagonist, as OP as ever. Shenjingzhou didn't want to say another word. With a let's go type of gesture, he led the way through the rift. Sounds a lot like the whole vampire can't pass the crossroads. Yeah, I love superstitions like that. I really do. It's so fun. Outside the holy mausoleum, it was a bright and sunny day. Lo Binghe reached out to support Shenjingzhou unprompted. They're outside! They're finally outside! Come to think of it, it really had been a long time since they had such a normal interaction. As soon as Shenjingzhou had this melancholy thought, he couldn't resist shooting a glance at Lo Binghe. Seeing him all beat up, Seeing him all unbeat. What? No, what the fuck? Seeing him all upbeat and refreshed. It really did seem like he was quite well. Funny how Shen Jingzhou had staked his sorry life to protect Lil Binka, and all that trouble slid off him like water off a duck's back. Turned out, all this time he'd spent snoozing away was to recharge his OP halo. Shen Jingzhou waved goodbye to his own dignity. Lil Binka suddenly said, But other than hearing Shizun cry, Shen Jingzhou smiled faintly. Who was crying? Lil Binka immediately changed his tone. Other than hearing someone crying, I also had this strange feeling. At this, Shen Jingzhou grew a bit worried again. So he really did have some lingering symptoms. He said quietly, What sort of feeling? Lil Binka shook his head. I can't say. Did it hurt? It didn't hurt. It was very... Before he could finish, a confused expression crossed his face, and he looked down at his lower body. Shen Jingzhou was silent. In italics. Hello, Heavenly Pillar. Goodbye, Heavenly Pillar. This conversation was halted before it could continue. Tianlang Jun's voice drifted after them like a deceased soul refusing to disperse. Peak Lord Shen, why are you in such a hurry to leave? The two of you have all but overturned my race's sacred land. How can you just simply walk out with this, like this, without leaving anything behind? With every word, Tianlang Jun's voice grew much closer. Before long, he appeared within sight. The Mobe clan's ice magic, which had clung to their tomb for millennia, had managed to delay Tianlang Jun and Judilang until Shen Jingzhou and Lil Binka left the holy mausoleum. It had truly done a lot. Lil Binka was already displeased that he had been unable to simply shatter those two into ice shards earlier, and their choice to deliver themselves to him quite suited his wishes. His knuckles cracking, he glared at Judilang, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. You dared to feed my Shizun your blood? You named my baby after the Loch Ness Monster? That's what this sounds like to me. The dinosaurs were so... As soon as Chu Jilang saw Shen Jingzhou, an abashed expression crossed his face. Tianlang Jun looked at Lil Binka, then said, You can't say those words with that sort of expression. Didn't you also feed Peak Lord Shen your blood? Or does the other set of blood mites in Peak Lord Shen's body belong to someone else? Upon hearing this, Lil Binka froze, and his fists clenched tight. As soon as Shen Jingzhou began to lift the hand holding Shuya, Lil Binka immediately said quietly, Shizun does not need to fight. I am enough on my own. And they were off. 3 pillars of dark chi soared, churning into the sky like storm winds. Watching the battle as a spectator, Shen Jingzhou was even more deeply appreciative of how demons and humans were inarguably 2 different races. The difference in destructive potential was really too profound, and it looked like Lil Binka had indeed just been recharging to upgrade his OP halo. A mere couple hours prior, he had been viciously beaten up, powerless to fight back. But now it looked like the protagonist's halo was still solidly affixed to Lil Binka's head after all. As Shen Jingzhou watched, he noticed a scarlet bone eagle circling through the air, lowering its wings and looking for an opportunity to rush into the fray. As Lil Binka fought 1-on-2, it seemed he hadn't noticed this bone eagle that obviously harbored nefarious intentions, but Shen Jingzhou could see everything clearly. Just as he was about to call out a warning, that bone eagle swooped and dove at the top of Lil Binka's head. A sneak attack? Shen Jingzhou held Shuya in a reverse grip, took careful aim, and flung it at his target. The snow-white blade flew like an arrow, running the bone eagle through like a bolt of lightning. But before Shen Jingzhou could breathe a sigh of relief, he saw that the bone eagle body didn't fall, but scattered into thousands upon thousands of droplets, which surged toward him. Tianlangjun suddenly drew back and hopped away from the battle with a laugh. As the blood droplets scattered through the air, a stricken expression flashed across Lo Binka's face. Shen Qingzhou immediately realized that Tianlangjun had solidified his own blood to create this bone eagle. He had sent the bone eagle to ambush Lo Binka, but his true intent had been to draw Shen Qingzhou into attacking and shooting it down. Have a good look. Just as Shen Qingzhou realized this, he received a downpour of bloody rain to the face. Tianlangjun smiled faintly. He raised his hand and made a fist in midair. Shen Qingzhou immediately felt his heart clench, as if it were now in someone's palm, being kneaded and pinched maliciously. That's what I feel like my ovaries do to me every month. It's fun. I'm stretching. Thanks for the stretch. It's so fun. It's so fun. Okay. Whew. There was just too much blood. Though he had shut his mouth tight, he still tasted a hint of rust on his tongue. Who else guzzled heavenly demon blood like Red Bull? Who else had drunk the blood of 3 different heavenly demons? Lo Binka's eyes were red with panic, but Tianlangjun's blood was inside Shen Qingzhou's body, so he didn't dare do anything rash, afraid Tianlangjun would unleash the blood mites. He could only grit his teeth and yell, "Stop!" Watching Shen Qingzhou's face go green and pale in turns, Zhuji Lang couldn't resist speaking up. "My lord, show some mercy." Tianlangjun shrugged. "That depends on what our other young friend will do next." 3 sets of blood mites were tearing it up in Shen Qingzhou's insides, enmeshed in open warfare. Of them, Lo Binka's blood was concentrating on protecting Shen Qingzhou's organs and meridians, while it held a firm advantage over Zhuji Lang's blood, but it had to struggle to a stalemate with Tianlangjun's blood at the same time. Fighting on both fronts, 1 on 2, would inevitably leave him in a serious bind. Instead, the ones who could unleash themselves to the fullest extent were Tianlangjun's blood mites, because he had nothing to lose. "You better think this through," Tianlangjun said to Lo Binka. "If we continue like this, who will be the first to falter?" The worry and helplessness in Lo Binka's eyes grew greater and greater, but in the end he conceded, only so far as, "You stop first." Though an elder, Tianlangjun possessed absolutely no awareness of the concept of humoring his juniors. Instead, he said, "You first." "Fine," Lo Binka instantly replied. Tianlangjun's smile was unreadable. "He truly is." He turned to look at Zhuji Lang. "What should I do? For some reason, when I look at them, I feel a bout of extreme displeasure." Zhuji Lang silently nodded. Shen Qingzhou accepted his misfortune, but he didn't want to drag others down with him. All his life, the characters he hated most were those who had gotten taken hostage. If someone wanted him to become this sort of weak character who held others back, they might as well just kill him. Sorry, I need to breathe. I haven't breathed in a while. Whew. He managed to keep this form. I didn't read that. Okay. He managed to keep this from showing on his face as he said, "This distinguished one can torment me however he wishes. As you said, after drinking this many times, I ought to be used to it by now. But if you want Lo Binka's body, don't even think about it. Lo Binka, if you surrender to him, I'll crush my own skull." "Shizun!" Lo Binka yelled, furious and helpless. "Shut your mouth," Shen Qingzhou snapped back. "Who said I wanted this body?" Tianlangjun asked, mystified. Shen Qingzhou was speechless. "He's not as handsome as I am," Tianlangjun continued. "Why would I want his body?" Shen Qingzhou had no words. Who said you were more handsome than him? Who gave you the license? Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky personally confirmed that Lo Binghe is unparalleled throughout the ages, across the 3 realms, and the heavens and earth, envied by men and admired by women, beloved by the young and old alike. That he's this novel's #1 hotcake who could shock all of existence and make gods and ghosts alike sob over his beauty, okay? All in italics, of course. Shan Qingqiu's face grew dark with consternation. Consternation. Then what exactly do you want? My lord wants that sword, Zhujilang replied for him. That's right, Tianlangjun said. I'm going to give the human realm a present, but I can't do it without that sword. He wanted the protagonist's golden finger? Shan Qingqiu's internal monologue was filled with a barrage of "Haha, you wish! Who do you think you are? You won't even know how you died," and the like. Only to see Lo Binghe raise his arm, then Zhujilang raise his. In an instant, the exchange was complete. Swift and decisive, without a moment of hesitation. Hand him over, said Lo Binghe. Zhujilang swiftly transformed into serpent form and snatched Shan Qingqiu up into his mouth. Tianlangjun leapt astride him and laughed out loud. You really believe me? This really was too shameless. Just like a grown adult making a pinky promise in order to con something out of a little kid's hands, then turning around and refusing to follow through. Shan Qingqiu felt a sense of injustice on Lo Binghe's behalf for this bullying, and even surrounded by Zhujilang's fangs, blurted out an accusation. Don't you know you're his elder? I only know that I'm a demon, Tianlangjun said in a gentlemanly tone from his perch atop Zhujilang's head. Big Lord Shen must have spent too long lingering among humans and forgotten that our race never cared for keeping our promises. Of course, most of the time, your kind only keeps up appearances as well. With those last few words, the smile faded from Tianlangjun's lips. Shan Qingqiu's vision went dark, and something bright red and stinking hot enveloped him from all sides like a sack. Zhujilang had swallowed him whole. Okay, I meant, okay, it's just Zhujilang had swallowed him, and that's the end of the sentence and the chapter, but for some reason I wanted to say had swallowed him whole, which is the same sentence, but like, the fact that it's not, okay, anyway. Zhujilang had swallowed him. He swallowed him. Dang on this dumb old sword for Shiza. I gotta swallow this dumb. It's true. Nothing is more important than Shizun. And that's the end of the chapter. I'm so, I have this complex about reading the last line perfectly, but then it gets too in my head, and then I end up like not reading it perfectly almost every time, pretty much every time. Anyway, he's in his tummy. Oh my god, I love this book. Ugh. The next chapter is called Tianlang. Oh god, the next chapter. The next chapter is really good too. It's fine. I'm fine and normal about everything. What wouldn't I be fine and normal about? What wouldn't I be? Alright, that's the end of the chapter, and that's where we are ending off today as well. I can put that down now. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed that. I will be leaving because it is hot again, and I also need to pee. Let me see. La 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 la. Why does everyone stream today? Yeah, I'm not gonna raid. We're not gonna raid. We're just gonna hop off. But yeah, thanks for being here. Sorry I had to delay it a day. and a week last time, you know, because last time we, anyway, shit happens. I'm coming to term with the fact that shit happens, and it's not fun, but it is what it is. And I don't know, I really don't like, the autism in me really, really wants to be able to keep to a schedule, but the ADHD and everything else disabling about me is does not want to do that. But yeah, I really do try my best. I really, really do try my best, and unfortunately, it's not like it doesn't seem like my best, but it is. I promise. But also, I shouldn't fret about it being my best or not. Are you guys ready for a therapy session where you're my therapist? That's fine. No, I'm gonna go. Thanks for hanging out. Take care of yourself, even if the heavenly demon blood is making you pain. It is. Whose blood did I drink? Ah, this bitch. That actually, you know what? That makes it so much more fun. Thank you so much for saying that. that makes it so much more fun to imagine it's just heavenly demon blood. Oh, I'm so easy to please. Alright. Well, yeah, I'll see you later. I'm actually. Oh, guys, Daggerheart tomorrow. Daggerheart tomorrow. It's like D&D, but not. It's a different form of D&D essentially. It's a different game, but it's like. Anyway, I'm gonna be playing it with my friends, and Foxy is going to be DMing, and it's gonna be fun, and I hope you can be there. I am only gonna stream it on Twitch because I have a lot of things to set up. Hello, set up here. Hello. I'm also gonna be like doodling during it just to keep my own focus, but yeah, I'll have a little screen up for that as well. So yeah, if you like D&D or TTRPGs, maybe take a look. Maybe? Okay, that's all for today. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. I have to do this manually. Stay safe. Have a good rest of your day. And be fucking chill. I don't know. Okay, bye.